Welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast. Today, Giant Talk is delighted to be joined by Dr Harley Phoenix. Harley is Learning and Development Manager at Benchmarx and has a PhD in behavioural science. Today, Harley and I are going to talk about behaviours in leadership and how you can use behaviours to create a collaborative culture. So welcome to Giant Talk, Harley. I'm delighted to have you with us for today's episode. Before we get into today's topic, please can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. Well, as I said, I do have a PhD in behavioural science, so I think it's quite nice to sort of learn how I ended up getting it, really. I've always been involved in learning and development for many, many years. And I was always interested in how people work, what's going on in their heads from a training perspective. And so I started going, on to do psychological qualifications and whatnot. Then I converted my degree. Then I took the next step and then did more and then more, and I couldn't get enough of it. I ended up in 2018, at the grand old age of 47, finally getting my PhD in behavioural science, purely and utterly because I couldn't stop learning because it's just such a fascinating subject. And I've learnt to use it in every shape of my life, from my personal life to my professional life as well.
Thank you. It's definitely a fascinating subject, and I'm interested to hearing more. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, but let's start by talking about behaviours in leadership. What are some distinct characteristics that add up to the common behaviours of a good leader?
It's quite an interesting question, this one. And there's so many different viewpoints on what good leadership looks like. And I think as a society, we're terrified to make mistakes. Yeah. I know when I've put out some leadership development courses, people go back after them thinking, well, what if I get it wrong? What if I'm not that person that I should be? Maybe I should listen more to my colleagues, collaborate more, all these great things that you should have as a leader. So for me, what makes a better leader is not only the listening, the listening to your colleagues, the strategic thinking, that encouragement, that nurturing, that coaching. That's, in fairness, you can Google search that and it will come up with the best characteristics of a leader. Fine. But what about those times when we don't get it right? Okay. So that's the bit that I think for me is a really great characteristic of a leader. And I'll explain myself a bit more on that. I'm going to give a story, actually. The other day I was at an event. And as I was, it was coming up to lunch and I was hungry. And I get a little bit itsy when I'm a bit hungry. I think it's called hangry, but there we are. So I was kind of getting that. And finally, they opened up the canteen to us all. There was 187 of us in this meeting. So they opened up the canteen and I thought, I want to get there first because I don't want to have to queue. So I got up out of my chair. And then went over, and then a colleague came over to me to come and talk to me, and I basically dismissed that colleague and said, "Oh no, I'm going to get some lunch," and almost palmed them off. And as I was walking away, I noticed in the reflection of the glass door that they just looked really dejected and slumped and then sat down. So I then realised that my behaviour caused that reaction. So I had a choice: either I could carry on and go and to the canteen, get sort of one of the first places in the queue, get my food, and then go back to that person and say, sorry about that. Didn't mean anything by it. Or I could turn around and go back and talk to them and then, end up in a very long queue. I chose that one because for me, how I interact with other people and the relationship I have with my colleagues is more important. So I went back over and I said, do you know what? I'm really sorry about that moment. I was just completely fixated on food. I said, I get a bit hangry. I was trying to run to get there. What was it you wanted to talk to me about? She said, I just wanted to take you through some ideas. I said, I'll tell you what, let me go and get some lunch and we'll sit down and have a chat about your ideas. How does that sound? Brilliant. And as I walked away, that person wasn't slumped. They were sat up in their seat like, yeah, someone's listening to me. This is great. Mm-hmm. And I think it's understanding that we as leaders don't always get it right.
Yeah.
And really embracing that, it's sort of understanding, do you know what? I'm going to have off days. I'm going to have a day where I'm upset about something. I'm going to have a day that I'm angry about something. But it's how you manage that with your team and that open and honest conversation that you can then have with them. I hope that makes a bit of sense, because what I don't want to do is go down through the Google search route of, okay, so a great leader listens. Yes, mm-hmm. Great leaders do listen. Great leaders collaborate with their team. They really nurture the areas that they're not so good at and coach them in the areas to greatness, that they're doing really, really well. But the point is, we don't always get it right. And when we don't get it right, to have that safe environment where we can get it right, we can get it wrong, and allow others to get it wrong as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to, like you've said, to recognise that you won't always get it right, and you're not going to be perfect. And I think you started that response there saying that we want to be perfect, and we think that everything can be perfect. But I think if you're acknowledging that there will be times, and there are times when you won't maybe get it right or right first time, and recognizing that's important. So leading on to how those behaviours can create a collaborative workplace culture. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and what you can do as a leader to create that culture?
Collaborative culture is quite an interesting thing to me, because I've been involved in many cultures myself. I'm currently in a fantastic collaborative culture with my current job role. Okay. I know one of your podcasts was about psychological safety. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to touch on that for just a second, because psychological safety within the workplace is part and parcel. It's paving the way for a collaborative culture. I do have a team of people that I work with, and we have a very open sort of comms link to each other, if you want to put it that way, where we can be honest. They can challenge. I can challenge. And if we're unhappy about something, we bring it into the group and we talk it through. And that allows us to have a space that is trusted by all, which then gets the best out of the team. I had a recent issue with, I say an issue, there was a problem with one of somebody that I work with, used to work with, and they were having a problem with their own team and couldn't get the best out of them and didn't understand why. And I said, well, have you asked them? Have you asked your team why, they're behaving in the way that they're behaving? She said, well, no, not really. It's a bit difficult. And I said, okay, why is it difficult? She said, well, we're not really talking very much at the minute. Oh, there's your problem. Mm. So essentially they were underperforming. There was a sort of, I wouldn't say a toxic feeling about it, but it was starting to go down that road. So I said to my colleague, to a friend, right, what you need to do is actually sit down and work out what's going on. People don't wake up in the morning and say, do you know what? I think I'll underperform today. There's a reason for them displaying that behavior. Okay, so it's understanding. And I said, you could go into that meeting or that one-to-one, however you decide to do it, and do it as a one-to-one. Don't do it as a team exercise, because it needs to be one-to-one, and each individual needs to have their say. So with each individual, it's like, right, okay, let's have an honest conversation. Something's going on here. Let's talk about it together. Okay. How do we get the best out of each other? How do we work well and better together? And you know what? You'll find that, to begin with, people are going to be worried about talking. They're going to be worried about, oh, do you know what? I don't think I could do this. I don't think I could be this honest. Then that means that you as a leader, you be honest about something. Do you know what? I've noticed that, you haven't performed so well recently. Is everything all right? Is there anything I need to give you more of? Then it opens it up, doesn't it? It's like, do you know what? Okay, I haven't, because I'm having a really bad day, time at home. I've not done this, whatever the issue is, it then becomes aired. Mm-hmm. You've given it airtime, so to speak. Then the leader there can then turn around and say, okay, so how do we get through this? What do we do to bring out the best in each other? Mm-hmm. And you know what? Quite often it's one or two things, or if not both, support and communication. I need more support. I'm really struggling with this. Okay, let's work on this with you. I need to be part of the group. I need you to tell me what's going on. Okay, let's have weekly meetings. And you know what? Once you've created that safe zone for them, and you know how each and every one of your members of staff wants to be spoken to, what they want, what they need from you, what they need from others, it then becomes, right, okay, we've got everything we need. Then it starts becoming a collaborative culture, because it's built on trust and the conversations that you've had and that you will have in the future.
Yeah, I think the honesty and trust and communication are all, as you said, key things to build that collaborative culture. You want people to come forward with ideas and feel, and to have that safe space and openness where they can, rather than sitting and probably thinking what will happen if I say this, or if there's a fear of, I don't know, maybe their idea will be shot down. Or on the flip side, if you have that open space where your team and your employees can feel that there won't be any of that around them, I think then that definitely helps build that the culture. And there's probably people listening that have been in those sort of situations, and like you said, support is such a key word. And I think it's important, as you've mentioned, you don't have to have the conversation with your employee that they could be having problems at home or difficulties with their workload. It doesn't have to be in front of the whole team. One-to-one is so important to have to approach those the issue. So I think, definitely.
Well, exactly. The thing is, it's like with every person that I've ever worked with, I would say probably more so in the last 8 years, I will always have the conversation, say, okay, it's lovely to meet you. I'm Harley, you're Emma, whatever. And it's like, okay, how do we work together? How do we get the best out of each other? Let's have a chat about that. How do you want me to treat you? Because some people like to have it, like a bit of fluff around things, like to be sort of nurtured. Some people just want it as it is. Some people just need you to be assertive with them. And do you know what? That's all about how you both sort that out. And I've had some of the best workplace relationships based on literally communicating with each person in the team and saying, how do we go about this? What do we do? How do we get the best out of each other? And for me, it's how we manage these moments that makes or breaks us as leaders, and how we open up not necessarily a collaborative culture, but a great culture, great working culture, that you're going to get the best out of your team because there's that trust instilled in you.
Yeah. Yeah. And those open lines of communication, so to speak.
Absolutely.
We spoke before when we had a pre-podcast call catch-up about the different types of workplace cultures. And I thought it would be good if you could go through those with our listeners. I know there's a lot of talk about toxic cultures and things like that, but it was really interesting for me for you to go through that there's 4 different types. So I thought it'd be good if we could share those and talk a little bit about the differences.
Okay. So it depends on where you look, in fairness. You can read multiple amounts of books or, go onto the internet and see loads of posts and whatnot about different cultures. But for me, it's all about 4. And I'll take you through those 4. So my first one is the market culture. So that's invariably a business that's all about, it's normally commission structured. It's all about the money, all about, right, we need to get the sales in the door. We need, a lot of bums on seats, so to speak. Let's get everyone in. Let's get out there. Let's take out the opposition. And it's a real marketing push for commission, money. And it can be good, it can be bad, it depends. I know, I don't mean it from a bad perspective, but Amazon are a marketing culture. They, are very much into, controlling a lot of the market. Mm-hmm. And it's all about sales and how fast people can get deliveries done and everything like that. So it's a very ideal look at what a market culture is. So I'm going to go on to the next one. The next one's adhocracy. And this is my personal favourite, but it's mainly sort of startups, I would say, small businesses. And what I mean by adhocracy, it's kind of the people that are, employed are basically given, a free rein. Right, okay, just come up with some great ideas. Okay, what are we going to do? Let's just open it up. Let's be creative. Let's think outside the box. Let's think differently. Okay, but you quite often find that is, as I said, a startup or a business within its first 2-3 years of going, because as soon as a business gets bigger, they will drop into one of the other different types of culture. Clan culture is about, a nurturing workplace. So if I was part and parcel of a clan culture, I will be coaching and nurturing my staff. I would have my direct line manager that would be coaching and nurturing me to be the best version of ourselves. And it's all about that family feel, and getting the best out of everybody in there. And it sounds like really idyllic. The downside to a clan culture is that there's less marketing there. They focus more on the person in the business than on the actual business itself. Okay, so there's it's weighing it up. Yeah. Lastly, the hierarchy culture. So the Army, the Navy, Air Force, that's a hierarchy. Someone has to report to another person. There's a rank, a progressive rise of people from, the top, the director, the senior manager, the manager, however that looks for any of you, but you have to report into that person, and it's really run on that kind of thing. You can't make a decision without going to the next person up. Okay. So they're the 4 different types of culture for me. And my ideal culture would be to have a little bit of all of them in. Everyone needs somebody to report to. So you're always going to have an element of hierarchy. I report into somebody above me. Mm-hmm. They report into somebody probably above them. Okay, so we all need that sort of structure, because otherwise it would be chaos. You need that clan culture. I'm a big believer of the clan culture. I mean, I've got an incredibly nurturing boss, and I nurture my people that report to me. So we do have that. But with the clan culture, I think it's great when you nurture and you coach someone, but it's a 2-way street. You should be going 50%. They should be coming 50% back at you. And I think people sometimes forget that, and they over nurture, they over coach, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The adhocracy, the culture, let's think differently. Because we work in, or because I work in the L&D industry, you have to think differently. Everything's changing.
Yeah.
There's lots of trends going on out there, but how do you find out what the trends are? So we have about 3 hours per month where we shut off the computer, we shut everything down, we don't even answer our emails, we sit in a room together, lots of whiteboards around us. We've got one computer, which is not linked to our emails, where we can have a look at the internet and we look at trends in the industry. We come up with ideas. We think, okay, this is not working. Okay, how do we get it working? What can we do? So we give ourselves that creative space. So it's a little bit of adhocracy. We're just thinking differently. Market culture, every business needs money. So we need to be able to push the company in a way that is creating, a lot of money coming in. But it needs, every company should have a little bit of each of those in to make it work really well and to be the best at what they can be. If it's just predominantly hierarchy, market, adhocracy, or clan, it's not going to work because there's always going to be one of those that's missing.
Yeah, it's interesting how you've just gone through and spoken about having a little bit of each, because when you was explaining each one, I was thinking, it sounds ideal to have a little bit of each one. So how does that work? And the way that you come together and share ideas, and like you said, shut your emails down and yourself off to look at trends, and with everything, and it's just fast moving. And me coming from digital marketing, the amount of new trends weekly that you have to look at. So I think having that collaborative culture to be able to share ideas with the team is important. That creative space. And I was just thinking also, inevitably in an organisation, whether it's in your team and those that you manage, or maybe across other leaders, you will have individuals that aren't as motivated or collaborative for various reasons that I know we've touched on in the beginning of the podcast. And I was just wondering what anyone listening can do as a leader themselves to try and sort of change the behaviours of others, whether it's another leader or an employee that maybe aren't as collaborative.
Okay. Like I think I mentioned earlier about the two things that are the downfall of most cultures and leadership values are support and communication. So if I had a team member that was just not collaborative, not really working with the team, I've got to find out why they're displaying that behaviour. That's a conversation. It's just a conversation. Do you know what? Sometimes it helps if you take them outside the business.
Yeah.
Go and have a coffee in a coffee shop. Because you're taking them away from the thing that's stressing them out and putting them into a safer zone, so to speak. And it shows you as a leader that you care. You care enough about that person to want to have a chat, but also to take them out of the situation and really get to know them. And allowing for honesty and whatnot. So that's what I would do. I would have the conversation. Okay, so talk to me. I can see things aren't going so well for you. Talk to me. Take me through what's going on. And create that safe environment in the fact that, whatever you say to me right now stays with me and you. I want to get to know you, what's happening with you, talk to me. And how are you? How do you feel? People are quite emotive creatures. So asking them how do they feel and how are they is a good way to sort of build that little bit of rapport to open them up, to have that conversation about why they're displaying those behaviours. And then it's a case of, okay, so they're displaying that behaviour. How do we change that? What do we do to change that behavior? What do you need from me as a leader to help you? Because then you're showing them that, okay, I'm still caring, but also what can I give you that's going to help you perform better? Sometimes it might be they're working too many hours. They might want to go down to part-time. They want to do a job share. They're just finding it really stressy at the minute. They're working on multiple projects. It's like, okay, so you're working on multiple projects, right? Okay, let's make you just run on that one. And what we'll do is we'll get someone in to help you on this one, or I'll take that one off of you and give it to somebody else. What would you prefer me to do? And always keep them involved. They're making the decision as much as you are as a leader. Okay, what do you see as your way of getting out of this behavior? What do you think needs to happen? And it creates, as I said, again, that level of honesty and trust, and you'll get the truth. And you know what? If at first they're not being quite forthright and not saying anything, it's just a case of repeat yourself. And I always say this to a lot of people on my own webinars: don't be afraid of the silence. So if you ask someone a question, like, what do you think you need to be able to, change behaviors? Stop. Literally embrace the silence, because you've asked a question and that person might need a little bit of time to think. Okay. But also by creating that silence, it does become a bit awkward. A lot of people find the silence awkward. Don't find it awkward. Well, you're going to find it awkward, but keep it going. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you're asking them a question, they need to respond to you.
Yeah. And I think it's a good, I guess, I don't want to call it a tip, but what you mentioned about taking them out of the environment.
Yeah.
Maybe that, it could be that's causing the issue, or if it's something, might be something that if it's not workload and it's not, working on multiple projects, it could be something happening externally outside of work, but they're not wanted to talk about that, with their line manager at the time. So I think it's a good way where they might open up more, like you said, in a coffee shop or somewhere away from their work environment. When we spoke before, something that you mentioned that I thought was quite interesting to touch on today was the issue around how important body language is, as I'm talking with my hands at the moment, and you can tell what's going on in a person's head by their body language. It's something that I was really interested to hear a little bit more about. How can this help leaders or line managers? I guess not the issue, but the subject of body language.
Okay, well, for me, I'll take you through it from my perspective on how I use it. I can tell when somebody is not feeling okay, stressed out, not at their best, closed, and whatnot, ill. You can, especially with, going back onto the previous question, when you're having these talks with your staff and trying to bring out the best in them and find out why they're displaying behaviours. If you've got somebody with their arms closed and they're rubbing their arm, I'm doing it now as I'm speaking to you, but they're rubbing their arm or what have you, or playing with their hair, all this sort of, it's called self-pacifying behaviour. We close our arms. We could be closing our arms because we're cold. So it quite often comes in multiples. So what I mean by that is they will display multiple pieces of body language, like their arms are closed, they're rubbing their arm, they can't look you in the eye, their feet are facing away from you, whatever. So look for multiples rather than just one. But if they're starting to sort of, rub their arm up and down, or playing with their hair, or rubbing, it's, as I said, it's called self-pacifying behavior. And the reason we do this is because we are not feeling comfortable. Okay, when we don't feel comfortable, we don't like it as human beings. So what we're trying to do is reenact what our mothers used to do to us between the ages of 3 and 5, when if we fell over on the road outside our house, we'd run in, go, Mum, 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 like that, and your mum would sit you on your knee and just rub your arm, go there, 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 there. And what we do in our brains is take ourselves back to that moment because it makes us feel comfortable. So essentially that thought process that's going on, that's unconscious thought that's going through your head, leaks out into your body and then becomes a pacifying behavior. So when I've got somebody doing that in front of me, I immediately think, okay, they're not feeling comfortable. I need to make them feel comfortable. So I will then, sort of make a point of saying, do you want to grab a cup of tea? Should we just stand up a minute, get a cup of tea? Because it stops that behavior. And they're like, yeah. If they don't want to stand up, it's like, do you want a cup of tea? Should we get a cup of tea? Or, do you want me to get you one? Those kind of things, because then it starts to make them feel comfortable taking the conversation off track and then back in again.
Mm-hmm.
So also, if the one thing I say to pretty much everyone I know and webinars that I've done previously is the one indicator that we all forget to look at is the feet. Okay. So if you're talking to somebody, if you have a meeting with somebody, if it's a sales meeting, you're trying to get a sale from somebody, if you've got somebody in front of you that you kind of think might be a potential partner, anything like that, look at where their feet are. Now, it sounds a bit daft. It really does sound a bit daft. But, we, as a body language expert, we know that certain things that you do with your hands, your head, your eyes, where you look, everything like that makes, can make or break a conversation. But people forget to look at the feet. If somebody is really interested in what they're saying, both of their feet is going to be pointing directly at you. Okay? Quite often someone will stand with their weight on one foot, which is pointing towards you, and the other one will be pointing away. Look at where that foot is pointing to, because normally it's pointing towards the door, which means that they want to walk away. They're not feeling comfortable. Okay, if someone's crossing their legs and both of their feet are completely the opposite direction to you, look at where their feet are pointing to. We are subconsciously thinking to ourselves, I want to get out of here, and our feet will go to the nearest door or the nearest exit. So for me, it's look at where the feet are. I know if you're sat down at a desk, that might be a little bit weird if you're looking under the desk and trying to see where the feet are situated. Mm-hmm. If you're stood having a conversation with somebody, see where the feet are pointed. It's quite, because then if you know that if they're interested or not interested, you can then change the tact in that conversation and bring their feet to you. Quite often, if I'm talking business with a colleague or what have you, and invariably if they're in a rush and they've got to go to a meeting or something like that, you'll find that one foot will be pointing towards you, one other foot will be away from you. So they're like, I really want to talk to you, but I've got to go. Mm-hmm. Kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, let's have a chat. Let's talk later. Let's set some time in. If I'm talking to a colleague about an issue or a one-to-one or a performance issue, a behavioural issue or what have you, and they're displaying their folded arms, self-pacifying, rubbing of the arms, playing with their hair, and their feet are pointing away from me, I know that they're A, not feeling comfortable, and that they are completely closed off to the conversation. So for me as a leader, I've then got to change that behavior in them by changing my behavior. Because what I'm saying, what I'm doing and how I'm interacting with that person it's not working for them. So I need to change my tact. Mm. And quite often, if somebody really trusts you, you have that open conversation with them, as I previously stated, and you're sat there with your arms open, you're completely clear of any obstacle in your middle, from your nose down to the tops of your legs, it's completely clear of obstacles. Then once they feel comfortable, they will start to mirror you, and they will open up. And then when they talk to you, they will use their hands, they will mirror everything that you do. And then all of a sudden their feet will start sort of looking towards you. They might shift their posture and uncross and cross their legs, and then their feet are pointing at you. They're open, and you know you've got them. But sometimes I think it's knowing if somebody's acting that way in front of you, there's a reason for it. And as a leader, it's understanding that they're doing that for a reason. No one just decides, as I said before, to get out of bed and display a certain behaviour just for giggles. They do it for a reason, and it's understanding why they're doing it. And don't be afraid to challenge or ask the question. I notice that you don't feel really comfortable. What will make you a bit more comfortable?
I think it's fascinating, and I think we could definitely get into a whole podcast on that. By the sounds of it, it's fascinating. It's something that I guess many people don't think about. Obviously, with not going looking under the tables at people's shoes and on Zoom and things like that. It's you can't look at that. But in terms of, I was thinking about myself working at home and having one-to-ones with my direct line report, and how important it is to have cameras on Zoom if you work fully remote or whether you work hybrid. I think it's important to see those cues, body language, because otherwise you can't really tell. I guess you can from maybe a tone of voice, but I think it's something that people can look out for when having those conversations with their team. It's really interesting. I didn't know the feats, and as you said, it sounds quite peculiar, doesn't it? But when you actually explain it, I now want a face-to-face meeting to look at people's feet. I think it's fascinating.
It's the one thing that we all forget to look at. And I had a friend that was not doing particularly well on the dating front. And I said, okay, and she always ended up having conversations with people that weren't really that interested. And I said, okay, what I want you to do is the next time you go out on a date, just have a look at where that person's feet are. If they're facing towards you, they're interested in you. If their feet are facing away from you, and not towards you, look at where their feet are pointing to. And it's either going to be a clear space, a door, the exit out. Okay? Note that and note that they're not interested and move on.
So there you go. Not just tips on culture, but also dating tips. I like to end with a lasting tip or piece of advice for our listeners to take away from the podcast. And I wondered if you could give our listeners a piece of advice on leadership behaviours or something they can think about to become a better leader. You've already given us lots of useful things to think about. If there's one thing that you'd like to end with, what would that be?
Oh, okay.
Put you on the spot here.
No. It's good. Do you know what? Know your audience. So those 3 words have really echoed for me throughout my career. And what I mean by that is each person that you have an interaction with are different. They're going to have different needs. They're going to display different behaviours. And the conversation is going to be different. So if you know that, and you know that each individual will need a tweak here or there, as in how you come across to them, you will then start to understand your own behaviour and how that interacts with that other behaviour. So I know that sometimes when I display a behaviour, it changes behaviours in my team. So it's understanding that and understanding that your audience will have different needs. And by understanding that your audience has different needs, you will then understand your behaviour sometimes creates other behaviours, and it's understanding that link for me.
I think that's a fantastic piece of advice, especially thinking of a leader and their team they won't all be carbon copies of each other. They will all have their different needs and how they each feel and respond to you. So I think that's a really good piece of advice to end the podcast on. Thank you so much for joining us on Giant Talk, Harley. It's been really, really interesting to talk to you, and there's lots that any leaders or even employees thinking about their own behaviours can take from the conversation. And I think it will be interesting to do a separate episode on body language. It's so fascinating, and we've just scratched the surface on that. So thank you, Harley, and thank you to you, our Giant Talk listeners. As always, if you have any feedback or if there's anything you'd like to hear on the podcast, you can get in touch with us by emailing growth@therebegiants.com. Thank you again, Harley.
Thank you. Bye-bye.